Namaskaram. Welcome to PGurus. I'm your host, JK. Once again, we have our guest, Dr. JSR, formerly called as Raj, Dr. Rajkumar of Lifeline Hospital. Once again, just to tell our audience his background, he's a surgeon. I guess he's been running this Lifeline Hospital for long, been doing a lot of service. He has been doing a lot of talks trying to debunk this Dravidian ideology that we have been seeing in Tamil Nadu for almost 6 decades now. So, welcome to the show once again, Doctor. Namaskaram.
Thank you, JK. Lovely to be back on PGurus as always.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking your time out and talking to us in this hangout. So, I guess once again we find that you being the appropriate person to talk about this ideology of Dravidianism, because your great grand uncle, right, wrote this Tamil Thai Vazhthu. As of now, as we know it, is the government order states that every government functions in Tamil Nadu should start with that, which is, I guess, we should give them a round of applause for that, for making the Tamil Thai Vazhthu as the anthem for Tamil Nadu. There's no two thought about it. But again, right, this Tamil Thai Vazhthu speaks a lot about not just the land, but also about the culture and stuff. We know for a reason that it has been cut short for their own whims and fancies, as we know it. So, taking from there, what do you think as Dravidianism, the D stock, the new model, as it destroyed what your great grand uncle has foresaw for this land? Are we in the right path?
Thank you very much, JK. And I would like to reiterate that this is actually a point that I'm not stressed upon earlier, but I want to tell the public that my mother's brother was Manonmaniyam Sundaram Pillai, a Tamil Pillaival who lived in Trivandrum. He is also very important because what people don't know about him, they just think he wrote Neerarum Kadaludutha. He was a committed 𝗖𝙗𝙬𝙤 philosopher. He was a man who stressed on one aspect of nihilistic 𝗖𝙗𝙬𝙤 philosophy known as 𝗖𝙗 Siddhantam. The key book in 𝗖𝙗 Siddhantam is called Sivañana Bodham. It begins with Avan, Aval, Adu, how the Godhead itself you can see as Avan, or he, she, or it. He was so good in it that in 1892, before Swami Vivekananda went to the Vivekananda rock, he stopped by and spent a night with my great uncle to understand about it. Now, such a man, he writes a play called Manonmaniyam. I want everybody to understand the actual background. And everything that I say is verifiable on the net and with documentation. When he wrote the play called Manonmaniyam, for one chapter, he wanted to write like a preamble to a chapter. And that preamble, he wrote Neerarum Kadaludutha. So it is one preamble to a chapter in Manonmaniyam is Neerarum Kadaludutha. If you look at the whole song, it's got many parts where he worships India as a mother and Tamil as her daughter, and says we are all from Tamil Thai. So he accepts the overall Akhanda Bharat, and he accepts a very 𝗖𝙗𝙬𝙤 kind of thinking of the land itself. Now what they did was, in Nuremberg, a place called Nuremberg, in which the Nuremberg trials happened, but before that in Nuremberg, Hitler spent quite some time in prison, wrote his famous book called Mein Kampf. In that prison, he met a guy called Goebbels, who told him that the truth can be hidden by repeating the falsity so many times that false becomes truth. That falsehood becomes truth. That's exactly what has happened in the last 50, 60 years. The so-called Dravidian party suppressed all nationalistic elements talked about by Manonmaniyam Sundaram Pillai in his Tamil Thai Vazhthu. and it has been twisted, shortened, and truncated. Now, I want to tell the audience that the same thing happened to Bande Mataram. We discussed last time that Bande Mataram, same thing happened. It was cut short, convoluted, and twisted to be accepted by the Islamic people who, under Jinnah, very violently crusaded against it. Here, in the case of Tamil Thai Vazhthu, nobody crusaded for or against, but the makers of Dravidianism altered it. And what we now hear at various functions is a very shortened and twisted and incomplete version of Tamil Thai Vazhthu. So that is the first step I want to say. From there, you go to what has been done to Bande Mataram. What has been done to Tamil Thai Vazhthu is the same thing that has been done in every single history book of ours. In every single history book, they give you 200 pages for the bloody Mughal Empire, which lasted only from 1526 Battle of Panipat to 1857, 330 years. The Chola dynasty lasted for 1200 years nearly. And they used to give us one paragraph. Who decides that? Who decides that one paragraph is enough for 1200 years? That leaves you with a sense of shame, as if we were a constantly conquered race, constantly attacked race by Muhammad Ghazni, constantly conquered by the Mughals. It gives us a sense of shame, and then 200 years with the British rule. So I just want to point out to people what happened to Indian history, Vande Mataram, and Tamil Thai Vazhthu all represent
In fact,
a twisting of the narrative.
yeah,
Twisting of the narrative.
right. You brought a very, very valid point. Uh, we kind of think all the time, at least in part of Western India, right, Maharashtra, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj is the man that people worship. Why was it not done in Tamil Nadu for Cholas or Pandyas, even Cherans, right? I guess they have completely eliminated them from the history itself. How do you think we allowed that to happen?
Beautiful. Beautiful question. And I've talked about this in a TED talk also, about saying how the narrative was built up by the post-Nehruvian historians. This Romila Thapar and Karan Kakar, this entire group. They give, what we read as history, we blindly read the books. There was no net at that point of time. Whatever was in a book, we just took it as gospel truth. And they manufactured the truth. There is a beautiful word in English called obfuscation. You hide the truth by just smearing falsity, and that's what these historians have done. They have given 70 years of shame to people. 70 years of complete shame. Oh my gosh, what is India? We were just crunched. We were just crushed. I'll take a simple point. They also created, everything was very Delhi-centric. If you look at the first war of independence, it happened in the south. It happened in Tirunelveli. It happened in the so-called Palayangotai and Palayakarargal Por, which is called the Polygar Wars. The Polygar Wars happened from 1750 until 1801. In 1756, the first South Indian martyr, 𝗤𝙭𝙤𝙬𝘁, was killed by Yusuf Khan, otherwise known as Mardanayagam, based on whom the silly fellow Kamal Haasan wanted to take a movie on. Just to rub salt into our wounds. But there's no mention in history about 𝗤𝙭𝙤𝙬𝘁. I myself didn't know about him until a few years ago. Veerabandi Kattabomman was hanged in Kayathar in 1799. Pulitevar, 1772. Gopal Naikar, 1775. The list is endless. Marudu brothers, 1783, 1784. Velu Nachiyar, 1772 to 1780. All hidden. Oomathevar, 1801. Dhiran Sinnamalai, the great Dhiran Sinnamalai, 1805. Endless. It all goes on like that, and by 1825, it was all over. But you must understand that for 75 years, Tamil soil was blood-soaked because our ancestors fought day and night against the English long before the Rani of Jhansi. If you look at Rani Velu Nachiyar, she fought from 1772, and she took over And from 1772 to 1780, she ruled unblocked for 8 years. Whereas the great Rani Manikarnika came in only in 1857, a full 77, 80 years after Velu Nachiyar, and she properly ruled only for a few months, 3 or 4 months. That too, she ruled out of Gwalior before she was beaten. So this actually has created a South-North divide. When I first read this, I must say this honestly, I was angry with the North. Why did so many heroes? Wherever you walk in Tirunelveli, there are heroes. There is Vanchinathan, there is Bharadiyar, there is Ottapadaram, Bau Chimbaram Pillai, all just buried under the sands of history. These few post-Nehruvian historians, they wrote a big book called The War of Independence, Indian War of Independence, 1857 to 1947. As far as all of us were concerned, when we wrote our essays, 1857 to 1947, 90 years, that's all. They left our South Indian heroes who started the battle long before that. And of course, because there was always a moment of appeasement of Islam. Please don't think I hate Islam. I just hate the way they've treated Hinduism. I have read the Quran and I can quote in Arabic from it. But just to appease them, the few freedom fighters from the south, Tipu Sultan, 10 pages on Tipu Sultan, 1 paragraph on whole Chola dynasty, in that 2 lines on Rajaraja Chola. Now I ask you, JK, after reading history books like this, how will we remember what is true history? History books need to be rewritten because history gives you a sense of belonging. I say, okay, my grandfather, Swami Vivekananda, came to see my great-grandfather. I feel different. When I heard that, something changed in me. So I believe that that kind of feeling, okay, I come from Chinna Marudu, Periya Marudu, who fought and destroyed the English, in whose family, right down to a newborn baby, everyone was killed by the English for fear of that gene continuing to fight against them. This is the kind of history book that we want to write. I want to read that history book and my blood must rise. And I must walk and say, breathes there the man who's never said to himself, my own native land. I must feel that way. Thayin Manikodi Parir, I must see and I must walk. Instead of that, you give me 200 pages of death and destruction by Mughals and British, and you give me 2 pages and 3 pages on Rajanand Cholan and Marthanda Varma, who was one of the first from the south to destroy the Portuguese in the famous Battle of Kolachel near Cochin. So nowadays, JK, I don't need to read storybooks. I could turn this around and show you. I'm surrounded by the books of our history, of our past. And people tell me, is it dead? No, history may be dead, but it brings you alive. And we need to awaken our people. And I have been going around colleges and telling the students, this is your history. This is what the first suicide bomber in the whole world. First female suicide bomber was 𝗒𝘄𝘃. 𝗒𝘄𝘃 was the head of Velu Nachiyar's, was what they called 𝗒𝙗𝙗. Or 𝗒𝙗𝙗 was another lady who sacrificed herself for Velu Nachiyar. So I believe that Nehru's features of appeasement, Nehru's policy of appeasement of 370A with Sheikh Abdullah, Nehru's policy of appeasement of Muslims all over, just in order to have their votes for Congress. So that cheap trick of having those votes for Congress, 70 years of national pride, including my own, have been lost. Not just to South Indians, but North Indians as well.
Right. I guess that's an elaborate answer in terms of what we have lost. And I guess we should be just reviving it as much as possible and let our future know what they had missed, or what we have missed, rather. So just one final question to end our hangout. Do you think the Dravidian ideology or 𝗤stock or 𝗤 model is getting kind of the beating that they never saw with the emergence of nationalism in Tamil Nadu?
Yes, I think these guys are using it very well, because there are just a few people who quote Bharadiyar here and there, or Velu Nachiyar, etc. You won't believe. I'm just going to say this in a very embarrassed and ashamed manner. When I wrote my first book called Heroes, about all these people, there's one chapter on Vanchinathan, there's a chapter on Bharadiyar, chapter on Chhatrapati Shivaji. So for that, Annamalai released that book, Annamalai ji, and Dr. Hande had received it. For that, I called all the descendants of these warriors, and my life changed. I called Bhagat Singh's, last bloodline descendant, and he told me I will come to Chennai only if I am allowed to spend at least 5 minutes in front of Chempakaraman Pillai. Few years ago, this happened, and I said, to my everlasting shame, I said, I'm not sure. I know where it is. I don't know much about him. I just know he was a freedom fighter. He told me so much about him. Bhagat Singh's son, from not son because he died. He didn't get married. He died a bachelor. His sister's grandson, Professor Jagmohan Singh from Ludhiana, is telling me about Chempakaraman Pillai, the Emden attack, and how he only coined the term 𝗤𝙬𝙬, and how he galvanized Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose sitting in Berlin. And I was so ashamed that I did so much research, got together with the family of Chempakaraman Pillai who are living in Chennai. We want only Ajit, we want only Vijay, we want only all these actresses. Huh? And then I wrote a book called The Patriot Who Attacked Madras. The book is a complete life and times of Chempakaraman Pillai. So the point you're saying is correct. We don't have that nationalism. And on stage that day, I had Velu Nachiyar's last relative, Chhatrapati Shivaji's relative from Tanjavur, from the Tanjavur Periyakoil. I had Bhagat Singh's last relative. I had Bharatiyar's great grandson Niranjan Bharati. I had 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝘁 Chidambaram Pillai's grandson and granddaughter, Maragada Meenakshi and Chidambaram Subramaniam. And still, many of my doctor classmates, almost every one of my doctor classmates who's practicing in Chennai, could not come. They did not understand the value of freedom fighters. Ille machan, some clinic is there in Aparam Pathigra. They missed a chance to hold the hand and take a photograph with Bhagat Singh's blood. Bhagat Singh's blood. Bhagat Singh, who said, kissed the noose that was around his neck and said, I'm dying for my country. I don't want a reprieve, because only if I die, millions of Indian women will want a son like Bhagat Singh. And he kissed the noose and walked to the gallows. To see this man's blood, they didn't have time. My own classmates, doctors, because they were too busy seeing 2 other patients. This is the state of poor nationalist pride that has developed as a result of that narrative. And now you bring in, there's already a weak nationalist pride. Now you bring in this Dravidian pride that says, you know what, we are the guys who did everything for you. We are the guys who brought social justice to you. We are the guys who looked after Muslims. We are the guys who looked after a scheduled caste. Come with us. I cannot believe that today, and this boils my blood, that Vanchinathan was killed. Vanchinathan shot and killed Collector Ash. Why did he kill Ash? Because Ash destroyed 𝗣𝗚𝘂𝘁 Chidambaram Pillai's life. Even today, once a year, on the same day, June 7th or June 10th, when 1911 it happened, a group of people calling themselves the whatever, Vidudalai leopards or whatever you want to call them, they march and they do a Veera Vanakkam on the grave of the Collector Ash, for the only reason that he allowed certain groups also to have a bath in Kutralam. That was a typical 𝗤𝗏𝘗𝘁 divide and rule policy that the British didn't give a damn for any section. Can I just end up with this one part, JK? I want the public to know that it was not the Justice Party or the self-respect movement, so-called Sree Iyer party, that brought in social justice. I want to say the 𝗣𝗏𝗻 thing, which Ivera has always called the 𝗣𝗏𝗻 champion, it lasted for 14 months and he spent 4 days to 5 days there. That's all. Nearly 1,200 people were involved in that 𝗣𝗏𝗻 Poratam. There's a big memorial. And out of those 1,200, in one small place, there is also the photograph of E.V. Ramasamy. He is by no means the hero of 𝗣𝗏𝗻, as is portrayed here by the same Goebbelsian narrative that is being used recurrently. The social justice you want, I'll tell you one last thing. 3 great people brought in social justice to South India between 1932 and 1937. They were the Diwan of Travancore, the Diwan of Mysore, Diwan of Kochi. They were Ramasamy Mudaliar, who was the Diwan of Mysore. Before him, R.K. Shanmugam Pillai, who was the Diwan of Kochi. Before him, the Diwan of Travancore, which was none other than C.P. Ramasamy Iyer. very clearly these three people fought, begged, requested the kings, Maharaja of Travancore, Maharaja of Cochin, to open up the temples for the scheduled caste, and that is how social justice movement was started in South India by CPR, Ramsamy Mudaliar and Shanmugam Pillai, and they were both, all three guided by none other than Rajaji, C.R. Rajgopal. But if you ask any child on the road who started social justice, the same 𝗍𝗚𝗏 name will come. This is the narrative. Please go check my facts, and you will see that every one of my facts is true. Give him justice, due credit, and justice where it's due. Not taking justice and credit from somebody else's work and then creating a narrative as if it came in. I know I'm running out of time, but I would just like to end by saying these are the social justice people. I'm waiting from December 22 in that 𝗣𝗚𝘗𝘗. One group of people in the so-called upper caste, definitely not Brahmins, but in the so-called upper caste, mixed fecal matter in the water and put it with the scheduled caste. This is a small group of 300, 400 people living there. And still, from December 22 to March 24, not a single person has been charge sheeted. Why? Sandesh Kali, you all saw in the INDI movement what Mamata Banerjee did, allowed her person Sheikh Shah Jahan to do to hundreds and hundreds of women who were publicly gang raped in the TMC office in Sandesh Kali. Is that social justice? And that is one of their strongest partners so far, though now she has decided to opt out from DMK. It is not DMK coming out from TMC. TMC said we have nothing to do with the INDA. Finally, the farmer protest, so-called social justice of the farmers. Everybody knows about the farmer protest happening in the AAP. Do you know that it is completely funded by Khalistan? Please see the videos. You'll see the farmers wearing, I never wear these expensive watches or gold. I believe that, this Rudraksha Kotta is bigger than everything. But I'm saying, you see the videos. These guys are all wearing gold chains like it's a walking jewelry shop, and they're driving these tractors. And you can see the Rolex watches. And you see what they're asking for. They're not asking for, they're asking for Khalistan Azadi. They want a separatist Khalistan. And now the news has come out that the people in Canada have funded up to $16 million to the AAP just to further the cause of separatism and to release the people from jail. We should all know this. We should all know this. Now come to the farmers' protest in South. How many of you know about the farmers' protest in Tirumadankudi? Tirumadankudi in Thanjavur Delta, 303 days of farmer protest. One man called Krishnamurthy died after he fasted for 47 days. And Krishnamurthy's death will always be in the conscience of the people who converted that sugar factory into a factory using molasses for distillery, 𝗏𝗏's distillery. The 𝗏𝗏's distillery took over this Tiruvāruuran sugars. And 57 crores had to be paid to those farmers, which was not paid. They protested for 303 days. Of course, it didn't get any media coverage. Of course, I didn't know about it until I met one of those farmers, and then one of the Velada farmers, and then I did research on that. And still many of them have not been paid. And the main person who's now running it is a person called Mr. Vasudevan of 𝗏𝗏's distillery. And he is supposed to be one of very, very close to the current dispensation, which we all know what it is. And he is one of the major suppliers of raw material for Tassmark. So is this 303-day farmer agitation happening on our laps in the Delta region of Thanjavur, in our Kaveri Aath, 𝗏𝗏𝗃 அரிசின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, happening right there, and we don't know about it. But everybody wants to know about the farmers' agitation in there. Everybody wants to know about the two women who were paraded naked in Manipur. I feel very bad for that. But what about the hundreds and hundreds of women who were gang raped and then sent back home immediately after they were married as brand new brides, something out of a horror story in Sandesh Kali in 2023, 2024. Nobody asks about that. Obfuscation, married narrative, gabels. These three words, everybody must listen. And we must understand that kannal parpadum poi, kadal ketpadum poi, thira visaripade mei. Please let us apply ourselves by checking every fact. Don't listen to me also. Check Sandesh Kali, check Tirumadankudi, check Tiruvāruuran sugars, check every fact that I've given to you. And then, dear reader, then dear Nair, dear listener, then you come to your conclusion.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. You kind of wrapped up with all the details that has happened so far. I'm sure that the state of Tamil Nadu or Tamilagam is moving towards nationalism for sure. And we will have an hangout on your book, Hero, someday soon. Let me just go go read the books. I know for the reason, in fact, I missed that event for sure. I know that people from all the great freedom fighters on one stage, it is unimaginable for somebody to do that. And thank you for doing that for us. And we will do the hangout on Hero someday. Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much, JK. Thank you.